And welcome to the Breakout from Burnout podcast. This is the Triumph Over Burnout Mum series, and we're going to do it a little bit different today. I'm Aisha Mohammed, and I am the host of this podcast. And let me just tell you a little bit as to why I decided to create it. Basically, I decided to become a burnout coach. And whilst I was doing my research and speaking to so many women and clients, mums in particular, I was led to realize something. And it's that much education is needed when it comes to burnout, what it is, how it shows up in your life, where it can ultimately lead you, and the fact that you can indeed recover and find purpose after it all. So this is why every week I have courageous women from all walks of life come on and share their burnout story with us. That gives you so much insight, because let's face it, if you don't know, then you don't know. So I'm here today, and as I said, it's going to be a little bit different because I'm with another professional, with Keisha Wilson, and she is a work-life strategist, and she also helps women who suffer from burnout. I help women who suffer from burnout also, but these are mums in business, and what I do is I help them to strike balance between their family life and their business. I believe you can have both without one cancelling out the other. So let's welcome Keisha. Welcome to the Breakout from Burnout podcast. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for just being a part of your whole show. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a pleasure to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so my name is Keisha Wilson, and like you said, I'm a work-life strategist where I help resilient women leaders reprioritize themselves while managing the demands of home and the responsibilities of career, right? And so I started this journey based on my own burnout experience. I had a professional career for almost 2 decades, and around year 18, I started experiencing something and I didn't know what it was. And I had a life-changing event, and it catapulted me to leave my career and get on the path of discovering what it was that I had experienced And that led to talking to many different women, which ultimately I started my business to then support other women through this same experience, because I believed if there weren't a lot of people out there that I could reach out to at the time, I didn't see a lot of people out there guiding women to support them in this way. There must have been lots of women out there like me. And so I began to share my knowledge on what I had experienced and how I was taking the steps to recover.
Wow. Awesome. And you know, that is something. There was another mom I had on here, and she ended up being thrust into becoming a caregiver for her husband. And she said she couldn't find anything either. And I think what we need to recognize, as you know, maybe backwards as this may sound, but it works, is that sometimes if you're in need of something and you can't find it, especially when it comes to support, you have to be that support.
That's right.
And in turn, you will find support for yourself.
Yes.
So that's really, really awesome.
Yes, many of us have been trailblazers in this work. So, you know, through our own experiences, and it's so true. I didn't see out there what I needed, and so I created it.
Exactly. That's awesome. That's what the resilient woman does. And in talking about, you know, burnout and resilience, I came across the fact that, you know, pieced together that we have a lot of societal pressures and also some cultural ones as well.
Absolutely.
And what I found in, you know, being a Black woman is that there are some cultural pressures in regards to being not just a strong woman, but a strong Black woman. Okay. This is like a lofty height that we aspire to, you know, attain. A lot of the time, the role models that we had who displayed the behavior of being a strong woman was maybe mom or grandma or auntie. And, you know, these women were like the glue of the family. They kept everyone together and they dealt with all the problems that people had, always seemed to have time for people and seemed pretty much perfect. And so many of us aspire to be that, not recognizing, I would say, the fact that some of these women, maybe behind closed doors, really suffered, you know, maybe outwardly with health issues such as obesity, hypertension, what's the other one? Yeah, diabetes, you know, these things that they say we inherit.
Yes.
As Black women. I don't believe so. I think, you know, with some dietary measures and lifestyle changes, we can most definitely lessen the likelihood of those things showing up in our lives. But, you know, the point is trying to emulate mom, grandma, auntie, who was the strong Black women in modern day time, is breaking us. And I would say it's because we don't necessarily have the know-how of how to handle life events, because burnout was very much germane to the office. You know, it was this office phenomenon where employees were burnt out, you know, they were demotivated, they didn't have much interest in work, they were struggling, they were ill all the time, and all of the other things that come with burnout. But it's transcended into everyday life. And we don't seem to be able to recognize it. So just let's talk about just some of the things that I just touched on there, because I know that it's fully loaded.
Yes.
But, you know, we can't jump over this point. This point is gonna have to be addressed. What's your thoughts?
Yes, it's so rich in knowledge, and I think it's deeper and wider thing that we have to talk about. So you talked about inheriting disease and emulating what we saw. Of course, the maternal model is definitely one of the contributing factors of how we how many women can sometimes come to burnout. So whether you saw your mom, carrying it all, doing it all, pushing through at all costs, all of those different things, whether that was a grandma, or if you saw every woman that you've been exposed to see the do those things as well. So we had that piece. When you talk about inheriting disease such as diabetes, hypertension, I do believe that there is a food and nutrition component to that. But I also believe that there is an emotional component to those factors as well. Whether that is holding in. There has been many studies across the globe, especially the medical community is getting onto this about how trauma informs the body, how the body responds to trauma, how and stressors, how your body reacts to stress. And sometimes in the case of what you said about emulating or trying to be strong, sometimes I have found that many of our foremothers were resilient because they had to be. It wasn't necessarily a choice. And the strong Black woman trope has been going on for quite some time. And in many cases, that was the only way that Black women could be seen, could be acknowledged, could be, championed in any way. That we were advocates, we were, women who did it all, whether by choice or in many cases by force over many generations. And so those lifestyles, those behaviors, and also generational traumas have been passed down throughout the generation and has now landed in the laps of our recent generation. And we're having to deep dive into why that is the case and what can we do to now shift those things. And so I'm seeing that in the lives of many Black women as well as women of color who experience things differently, whether that is from racial trauma on the job. Like you say, it is has been known as a workplace phenomenon. I don't believe that it started that way. I think that's where it was recognized, and the research was done first. However, like I say, many of women that I know in my family as well as in my community have been resilient for many years. And that has contributed to burnout because I believe that it's resilience fatigue, that you have to overcome so much, that you are going through so many different things, carrying whatever that is, and sometimes not even offloading that. And what that impact does to your body, what it does to your mental state, and what it can do to you spiritually as well.
Awesome. There's so much shame, that we carry as women that leads us to not be able to speak out. How do you mean you can't cope? How do you mean you don't feel like yourself? How do you mean you can't? It's almost like your Black card gets revoked if you utter those words. It's not allowed. And the idea of, telling somebody about it, it just brings about so much shame, like you're losing something. Because you're being honest and true about what it is you're going through and saying that, you need help. Because a lot of women find it very difficult to ask for help. And I think that the shame thing definitely, plays a part, and also guilt, because it's like, well, this is 2022. And when grandma had it hard and, mom had it hard, they didn't have half of the mod cons that we have. They didn't have a lot of the opportunities that we have, flexible working and all this different stuff, working remotely from home and all these different things that, supposed to make life easier.
Yes.
But, you know, here we are saying, help.
Yes. And I think it's such a complex topic, because I believe that when it comes to that, yes, there is shame associated with it. But one of the things that I've found when it comes to working with Black women in particular with this issue is that many of us may not have had a soft place to land. That when strong is your only definition or is associated with your identity, it is hard to then also be gentle. You can be strong and you can be gentle. We have not had as many models or opportunity to display both of those. Black women are definitely very nurturing, very passionate women, very they are protectors. They are multifaceted in so many different ways. We are amazing. But here's the thing, if that has been your only identity to now, there becomes some deconstruction that you have to, and deprogramming you have to do with your belief system, whether that's culturally, societal, as well as familial, you know, things that you believe, and deconstruct those things, deprogram yourself from that to say that you can be both strong and you can also be gentle, you can be empathetic, and you can be those in public places, not just privately. Because when we, oftentimes I've found that the women that I work with, they are afraid to do this publicly. Or there, like you say, there is some shame. But one of the benefits that I've definitely talked to the women that I work with is that they felt like they have never had a safe space. They've never had a safe space to say exactly how they feel, to let down, to put down what they were carrying, to express all of the things that they've experienced over a lifetime. And most of the things that they've experienced over a lifetime would blow your mind. That the fact that they are still standing, the fact that they have persevered through, that they have not only survived, but are triumphing, you're like in such a hostile climate of what they've experienced. And so it's to the testament of their resilience. But even being resilient, you can become fatigued for all of the things that you're doing, all of the things that you are, you know, you're champion out in the world. They're doing it in career, they're doing it in home. And then somewhere along the way, you lose that self-prioritization. And I think that's the piece that we're starting to bring back into the conversation.
Most definitely, because if there's anything that every woman I've spoken to, it is the fact that for some reason they find it almost impossible to prioritize themselves. Everybody else's needs must be attended to whilst theirs gets pushed to the back. You'll get to it at some point. Many women, moms in particular, tell themselves, even if it's to their own detriment, it's like a mode that they can't get out of, you know, and that's what makes our work so very serious, because as we know, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give that which you do not have. Many have tried and failed miserably. So that does not work. So tell me about some of the women that you have worked with, whereby you've been able to see a breakthrough, you know, of them being able to go from totally prioritizing everyone else to being able to actually put themselves first.
Mhm. So it's so many different facets of it. I believe that burnout and this deprioritization of self and resilience, fatigue, whatever words that you want to use, it has an intersectionality to it.
Mhm.
And so it's not just a workplace phenomenon. It's not just at home. It's a lot of different things that can contribute to it, whether that is microaggressions on your job, whether that is women who have had medically complex children with medical complex needs, and whether that is they've suffered some type of physical or medical problem themselves, multiple different variations of what this looked like in each of the different women that I work with.
Mhm.
And so one of the things is, like you say, it's about society, whether that's culture, and all of these things have fed women a lot of times to believe that our job is only to serve,
Mhm.
that our job is to support, that
Mhm.
our job is to self-sacrifice at all costs.
Wow.
And I think until we get to a place where we then begin to examine what those definitions and identities that have been passed down to us,
Mhm.
then we start there. We start with, first of all, looking at what does it look like in your life?
Mhm.
And I think that's some of the most transformational um, things that we do. And a lot of the women that I work with is just starting at, hey, what does burnout look like? Because I know for me, I didn't
Mhm.
even know that what I was going through was called burnout. I didn't have a name necessarily, attached to it. But there were some experiences when I look back that I was having. And many of the different women were having their own unique indicators that said that. So when we began to go back and trace what the indicators were, how early had they started, that is one of the most profound and earth shaking things. It seems so simple. And most times when I first come into contact with women leaders, of course, they're very strong, they're very powerful women. They believe that this cannot be this simple. And I've tried many of the different things that you're supposed to try, right? The 3 things, the 5 things, read this book, do this thing, take this course. Well, I've tried those things, but when I go back to the simplicity of understanding and being very connected to what is going on with me, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and start there, those are some of the most profound shakings that we've had.
And there's a lot in that. There really
Mhm,
is. There really is. Because there are certain kind of personality types
mhm.
that are more prone to burning out.
Yeah.
You serve like, high powered women,
Mhm,
who are very driven and ambitious.
mhm,
And, if you do have that kind of personality, maybe you might be a workaholic or perfectionist, um, or even a people pleaser, as a thing that drives and motivates, you're supposedly more prone to suffer from burnout.
mhm,
And when we actually work with women and we hear their stories and we tackle this part of not being able to prioritize others, that's when we hear the stories,
mhm,
of maybe when they were younger growing up and how they felt, or, the relationship that they were in that maybe broke them, that kind of sent them into these behavior patterns of needing external validation from others and things like that.
mhm,
Sometimes when we actually make space for women
mhm,
to talk and to share and to think about their life experiences and how that's impacting what's currently going on for them, you know, you may find the need to actually you know, for them to enter into therapy, because there can be some very deep wounds that are the cause, the starting point of the behavior pattern that's leading them to maybe not feel worthy enough to prioritize themselves, or to be so concerned with everybody else that they don't actually connect with themselves and look at, you know, who they are and what's really going on. So I think that a part of serving women who are encountering burnout is to, you know, once something is identified, you know, suggest therapy is going deeper into it, as to actually uproot, unearth, and do away with. What's
Yes.
your thoughts on that?
That can definitely be part of it. I'm definitely a proponent of multiple different ways of addressing the issue. So here's the thing that I've recognized is that a lot of women have come to me who have been in therapy for years. And some women, I believe that this sort of exhaustion, I believe that women leaders, they experience it different. There is a high functioning form of this that leads to a crash and burn that you may not have seen before. And so, and because of that, because they are able to still produce at high levels, because they are still able to do massive output, sometimes it is overlooked. It is overlooked as to that they are really struggling with something either behind the scenes, or maybe even telling people that they're struggling, but people don't realize that this is actually a struggle because they are still able to get all of the things done. And so I call that, I have a term for that called functional exhaustaholic.
Ooh.
And so, yes.
Exhaustaholic. Wow.
Yes. And so, very much like a functional alcoholic is able to perform their duties, they are able to go and work a job. They look perfectly fine to the outer eye, but behind the scenes, there are multiple things going on. And so, these women can often, who have exhibit this behavior, it's often they are lauded and applauded, and because they still can do those things, whether home, whether that is at work, and it's not always for accolades. There are some people who do that for validation.
Exactly.
You know, and there are so many different layers to that. But therapy is definitely a good option. But because of the way that women come to burnout, and I help them understand where is it that it shows up for them, then I believe the approach to helping them recover should be addressed in that way. And so not everybody responds to therapy. Sometimes there are physical things that the body has to do in order to de-stress and release stress, and to get it out of the system. And whether that's spiritual, whether that is mental, emotional, many different layers in which this has to be, addressed. And also, that can go alongside of the work that I do. When I describe to clients or potential clients, what is it that would make me stand out, or why is it that I would come to you? And the way I describe it is that therapy is the overarching, view. If this was the military, I think we talked about this. If this was the military, then therapy would be the aerial assault, right? And for me, as a coach who has experienced burnout myself, I come from a perspective that I am boots on the ground. And so my perspective is different. And so my perspective being different says that, okay, I have depth of knowledge and experience in saying that, hey, 6 doors from the left, there is, there is a door, and you're going to encounter this door. And this is how I have dealt with that. And this is how I have seen other women approach this issue. Here are some options. And then, okay, they go through that door and it's like, oh, yeah. And then we go through the door and say, hey, on the right, there is more than likely going to be this issue. It may look like this, but don't be fooled by that. It's just a person in a mask and they're performing. But this is really what this is. And that is how we're able to work through a lot of those complex problems. But I also work alongside of therapists, grief recovery counselors. I have recommended many different facets of support for the individual depending on what they are experiencing.
And that's the thing that I think as, professionals that work with women, coach, work-life strategists, spiritual coaches, that it doesn't take away in your service to somebody if you see that there is another expertise that maybe you don't have, but they need. There's nothing wrong with having therapy and having a coach and running them alongside each other so that you get the results and the support that you need, because so many of the behavior patterns and the habits and the mindset that we have, they are very much ingrained. And some of the situations that people are having to confront in their lives can be extremely complex.
Yes.
It's definitely not a one size fits all. Definitely have to work with women from the point of where they're at to bring them to wherever it is that, they need to be. It is so multi-layered because we are dealing with life, and life in this day and time is probably far more stressful than any other time. We have pandemics, we have predictions of famine, we have our children, there's certain illnesses that never used to be so prevalent, that are the ADHDs and all this stuff that now as a parent, as a mom, women are having to face. That's a lot, that is a lot.
And I believe that we are, it's not necessarily on our shoulders, but I believe that we are a key component to how this can shift. And it starts with us individually, right? How we shift internally for us shifts our homes. Then that starts to reverberate out. That's the power of a woman. So when we start shifting and showing up differently, everything around us begins to vibrate at that frequency.
It does.
And so I think it's so important that we, especially as women leaders, leaders in the home, leaders outside of the home, that we do this and we prioritize ourselves. It's so important. It reconnects us spiritually. It reconnects us to our intuition, that inner knowing. And a lot of us have gotten disconnected from that. It's our guidance system. We've gotten disconnected from our emotions. We've been told that our emotions are not valid, that they're not important, that you shouldn't bring them to the workplace or any place that they're. And I don't believe that. I do not believe that. And working with the women that I do, I know that that has been part of the downfall, is not feeling, is being numb to what they have felt and pushing through at all costs.
Yeah.
And so I understand that the fact or how everybody describes or says that don't let emotions lead. I understand those sentiments, but to totally dismiss emotions, especially that they are messengers, is I think one of the greatest downfalls that we could possibly do.
Definitely, because it's going against your nature. Like as women, we are nurturers,
Mm-hmm.
we are the first teachers, of any child that shows up in the world,
Mm-hmm.
Um, and therefore we're highly influential with what you say, like, in being a leader and the vibration, we can set the tone for our homes and anywhere we go, really, truly, once we start to do the inner work, the
Mm-hmm.
self-mastery. When we show up with an aura, a vibe, and it affects others. Um, in having to put on this armor, this toughness,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do all the things that we do, we have most definitely lost touch with ourselves and the soft side, which is really the feminine self,
Mm-hmm.
which has a
Mm-hmm.
lot of power. And this is an area that's become so lost that we don't really understand what it is. If I say, what is femininity? What does that look like? A lot of people would say, well, it's a woman. She's maybe very soft spoken. She's patient. She wears pink and dresses. But there's a lot more to it than that. And I think this is an area that really needs to be taught on. Like women have to relearn now, almost like what it is to be a woman, what it is to be feminine, because the terrain that we're living in, the societal pressures, cultural pressures, it's all kind of led us a different way in being this strong woman that just powers through until the job gets done.
Yeah. And so I think a couple of different things, right? So there is I think if you look at it from a perspective of left and right brain, we have overused the left brain, right? Which is considered the I guess masculine side of the brain, analytical. It doesn't mean this is not about men and women, right? But the analytical brain, the mind, all of those different things overuse and aggression and doing and all of those things, left brain. And so the right brain has not been as heavily used or valued in society, even in the workforce. And so that empathetic, that purpose, that flow, that nurturing, that all of those that are considered feminine principles of wisdom and intuition and all of those different
Creativity.
creativity and being, it's the being side. And so yes, we have gotten so conditioned to be in the doing and what we're doing, and running that through a feminine vessel all the time can lead to burnout. If there is no harmony in what you do, it has to be a play of both of those things to integrate them, to integrate the creative, the play, the purpose, the flow, the ease, all of those different things. It's a play. Mother Nature is one of the greatest um, examples of that. And so that there is a play between doing and being and releasing and all of those things, replenishment and restoring, all of those different things. We have to be able to do that. It can't just be driving. It can't just be work, doing, and all of those different things. There has to be rest. There has to be moving forward. There has to be action. There has to be rest. And so I think those are different things that we're going to have to learn as a society, not just women. I think men can also exhibit these different qualities.
Most
And to be a
definitely.
well-rounded leader, I think
Mhm.
anybody has to exhibit those both of those sides of qualities.
Yeah, yeah, because it's about being balanced.
Mhm,
Because what leads to burnout is a lot of unbalance, where things are totally unbalanced, mind, body, soul. You
mhm.
know, so yeah, thank you for sharing. Those perspectives. Now, some people might be looking in and say, oh, what is this new age stuff they're talking about burnout? Women should just be getting on, you know, with it. And if you know that you're putting everybody else before yourself, you should just, change that and take accountability for your behavior and what you're doing.
Mhm.
What would you say to that? Because we are very much in an age where, whenever something happens in life, there is the accountability factor. Where does that fit in on the subject of burnout?
I think women are taking accountability, right? They are taking accountability. But when you look at the height of the pandemic, I think it was January, September was the first wave. 865,000 women left the workforce. And then I think by January, there was 1.5 million, somewhere around 1.1 million and 1.5 million women that left the workforce. To me, that is not just a personal issue. When you have women leave the workforce, why were they leaving the workforce? They were leaving the workforce for many different reasons, but one of them was because they were caring for, had the responsibility of caregiving for many different facets of the life, whether that was children that they were caring for, whether that was elder parents, as well as doing many different things throughout society. And to me, things like that signal that this is not just a personal you problem. There is also a global reckoning that's happening and that we have to pay attention to. And it's not just on us personally. So we're doing the work here at a personal level, but that has to then reverberate out. But then from the other perspective, there are corporations that's now starting to recognize that, hey, this is impacting my workforce. This is impacting work retention. This is impacting a lot of production and different things in the job. So now they're paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're starting titles and different programs that have to do with overall wellness. Those that are on the cutting edge, the leading edge, are doing that. And so it's not just a personal problem. It's a global awakening to that, hey, there's an issue here. And there's a lot of things that haven't been addressed. And so I believe that we can do the work on our end and then also champion, you know, corporations and different people in key places can also champion going the other way as well. And we can affect change with going in both directions.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that we have to change the narrative of certain things, like what it is to be a woman,
Mm-hmm.
what it is to be a mom, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, and the strong woman narrative, just needs to be changed. What is it to actually be strong? To
Mm-hmm.
ask for help when you need it is
Mm-hmm.
to be strong. To create, enforce, maintain boundaries with people. Because
Yeah.
a lot of this that I've found in working with women and through the research that I've done on calls is certain things aren't taught as you're growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Because many of our parents were in survival mode,
Yeah.
some of them would work on shifts, dad comes in the morning, then mum comes out, and then she comes back at night, and the older sibling may have been the one, rearing the children, if you like.
Yes.
Trying to make ends meet and stuff like that. It was food, clothing, shelter, trying to
Yes.
do the best that
Yes.
they could.
Your
But
emotional well-being wasn't one of those things that
no,
was highly looked at.
no, self-care was not something that was spoken about.
Mhm.
The need to enforce boundaries with people, they might say don't let anyone take liberties with you, but there wasn't too many examples of how you can actually go about that.
Yeah.
you know
Right.
and I think adulting, in the journey and process of adulting, is when burnout is very likely going to visit you. There's a huge gap of knowledge. You just think you grow up, and you become an adult and you get on with life, but life throws things at you. And how do you maneuver when it does?
Mhm.
These are some of the things that need to be taught on, that if we teach our children, that is a part also of changing the culture and changing society and letting that ripple, go out. Yes, mom can build a business and she can be a dedicated mom and a woman with purpose. She has the right to want that for herself, and it will benefit her children,
Mhm.
and if
If she so chooses.
yeah,
Yes. Mhm.
and teaching our children through example, I think, is just nothing better than that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes, I believe exactly what you said. But I also have experienced many women who have, when we start to, I think I told you that I was an investigator for many years. So I always start to look back at where this may have taken.
Mhm.
And so many times I will find that in young adulthood, well, not long before they reach adulthood, many of these women have experienced burnout, different versions of it, as children, as
Mhm.
teenagers. And looking back of what their landscape and what was going on in their life and how that presented itself. And so many of the women that I work with have experienced multiple um they've had multiple different encounters with burnout.
Mhm.
And so when they have the major, everything, has a meltdown, then that's when they begin to look at, hey, what happened? How did I get here? And so when we began to do that journey of looking at, well, what were the first signs? And we
Mhm.
start looking back and tracing back sometimes as early as 7, 8, 9, 10 years old because of responsibilities that they've had or experiences, whether they were traumatic or just highly stressful situations that they've dealt with, that they've overcome and kept moving and never had an opportunity to grieve, to
Mhm.
release, to do any of those things, to deal with it in a healthy way, other than just surviving through it.
Yeah, that survival mode.
Mhm.
Yeah, is literally a killer. It's funny, isn't
Yes.
it? You're trying to survive on one end and the other end, you're heading towards the opposite outcome.
Mhm.
But thank you for this conversation.
Thank
I
you for
have
having me.
Oh, I've enjoyed it so much. We really do have to talk about this, ring the alarm, as we're doing, and start to implement some solutions. And it does start with self.
Mhm.
But raising awareness and educating helps to, help others avoid having to encounter burnout. The more you get to know about what it is and how it shows up in your life. So before we end, how would you describe burnout?
Mm. From my experience, I would describe it as exhausting all parts of you on every level. Some more than others, but on the physical, the mental, the emotional, and spiritual level. And that's why I think it's such one of those things that, workplace phenomenon, we can't just simply describe it as that. And so it's the battery being as such a deficit that it is hard to power yourself.
Right.
And so many of us as women, especially women leaders, have powered careers. We have powered our homes. And then when we go looking for a power ourselves to continue to maintain, and then we look at a severe deficit. And so that's what burnout looks and feels like to me.
Great. Yeah. And alongside that, it's other things which I'll just put in a different language maybe, but it's all encompassed in what you described, which is also feeling overwhelmed,
Yes.
Too much to do, don't know where to start, bursting into tears, or maybe the other end of the spectrum, you're getting angry because, frustrated because of how you're feeling and how the brain is not able to function properly.
Yes.
Brain fog, anxiety
is a big
tiredness, sleep issues,
yes,
gut issues,
yes,
feeling out of it, not being present. You're there with the children, they're talking to you, you staring into space, or you just thinking how you're gonna get through the night, let alone get up and do what you have to do, the next day. Not wanting to socialize as much, really kind of like becoming quite insular, not communicating as much as you would usually do. It can affect things in regards to your relationships, your intimate relationships. Your libido can be ill-affected. Frequent bouts of illness, every few weeks you're coming down with a cold or something.
Yes.
These are some of the signs of burnout.
Yes.
So
yes, I believe it's multiple layers of that. And there's, there may be some, and then it starts to escalate. Because the alarms are going off to alert you to, hey, there's something going on here. You need to take a closer look. And, that may be autoimmune diseases triggered. And sometimes in many cases, the women, they may not know. They may be going to doctors and trying to figure out what's going on, and nobody has the answers. And so, like you talked about before, is that it's not just therapy or all of this in a vacuum. And just like the medical community is starting to flourish, where there's functional medicine and there's these multiple different layers to what they're looking at. They're looking at your lifestyle. They're looking at what stressors you're having going on, all those different things. Those approaches are telling about the entire person. And so it's very similar to that, having that same approach.
Yeah. And also there's depression ultimately, where all of this can lead to. Ultimately, it's there. And, there's been women on the podcast who have had to go on to medication, in order to function, getting addicted to the medication, having to wean off of the medication as part of their recovery process. Some could, some, still having to take that in order to, just live day to day without being thrown back into the realms. Of burnout, being able to, function on a day-to-day basis and dealing with their depression. This is a place it can take you. And there are questions about it. What's the difference between depression and burnout? They're very, very similar, but
it can be. Some people experience burnout differently. Like, I've had women that believe because, that may not have experienced depression at all. But maybe highly anxious, or maybe highly functioning in anxiety, or they may not even have both ends of the spectrum. They may be somewhere in the middle that's totally numb, unfulfilled, this sense of, I've lost myself, or that I feel
Yeah.
like I'm just, I'm a shell of who I used to be. And
Mhm.
it may not be that they necessarily feel depressed. And a lot of times that's why they take so long in order to get the help, because sometimes, because they're still standing and they may not be, in the bed, in the, laying down and severely depressed. They do not believe that they have this issue. And so it's very complex. But
Mm.
certainly depression can be, it has its own designation, but you can be depressed and also have burnout.
They overlap so closely,
Yes, they can.
that would most definitely lead us to that conclusion.
Mhm.
Um, there's so much more that could probably be said.
Yes, I know. This conversation could go on forever.
I
And maybe we
know.
need to do a series with professionals where we
Yeah.
could, those of us who help in this way, where we could talk about all the different facets of that and what that looks like from, working with different people.
Exactly. And I was inspired this week with an idea to do something like that. I've made quite a few
Yes.
contacts. I'm sure you have some too.
Yes.
Um, to go ahead and do something. So we'll talk about it most
Awesome.
definitely.
Awesome. I'd love
Because,
to.
yeah, because what's going on in the brain, what's going on in the heart, what's going on in the liver, what is going on
Lots of
when you're in the
things.
state of
Mhm.
burnout. It would be good to get a holistic view of how it affects, let's say, a human being, you
Mhm.
know? So
Absolutely.
awesome. So there is something that you have. You have a book, is that correct?
Yes. Yes,
They said
yes,
it
yes.
in
I'm launching a book. It's called The Power of Ease.
you.
And it's going to be coming out in July. So right now I'm in pre-orders.
Mhm.
You can pre-order the book on my website at designherqueendom.com.
Mhm.
And yes, so yeah, I'm very excited about this project.
Excellent. Well, I can't wait to get my copy. I think it's absolutely awesome. I mean, there's just so much of a need, for books to be helping moms and women, to just navigate more safely, let's say, through
Mhm.
life, being empowered and feeling supported. So that's absolutely awesome. And where can we find you online?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So on Facebook, you can find me at Design Her Queendom, as well as Instagram. I'm also over on LinkedIn at Keisha Wilson, Kescha Wilson, and I have a website as well at designherqueendom.com.
Excellent. And you can find me here on Facebook and YouTube, and also my website, which is bestyouinmotion.com. I'm mainly on Facebook, so check out the business page, which is Burnout Coach for Moms in Biz, Burnout Coach Aisha Mohammed. That is where you will find me. And also next week with another courageous and phenomenal mom who will be sharing her burnout story, her burnout recovery story with you all, and some of the nuggets that, she was able to pull from that, which will be able to help you and other women. Okay.
Yes.
So I look forward to sharing time and space with you all again. And thank you so much, Keisha, for coming on.
All
I've
right.
so enjoyed our dialogue. It's been absolutely awesome. So until next time, take care.
All right. Thank you so much.